Welcome back everyone to the recap of round number 4 of my match against the Czech #1 top 100 player and former Super Grandmaster David Navara. And today was definitely one of the most exciting, if not the most exciting game I've ever played. There was so much happening and I'm really looking forward to recording this recap. I am going to warn you, as usual, I'm analyzing this without an engine, so there are going to be many mistakes in this analysis. I'm just going to show you what I thought about in the game, but since it was so incredibly complicated and such a long game, there are of course going to be mistakes. David started with c4. In the first game he started with d4. As I said then, I can expect anything from him: c4, d4, knight f3 or e4. I played e6, and this time he went for g3. In the first game we had a classical Queen's Gambit with the Carlsbad endgame variation with the doubled pawns, but this time he went for the Kingside fianchetto. I chose the classical setup with bishop e7, short castle, and now he went for the move b3, which probably many of you know that I play this quite a lot myself from the white side. I also recommended this in my Ready course for Chessbase, which you can check out in the video description down below if you want to have a knight f3 repertoire from the white side. Here I played the move c5, which maybe came as a slight surprise to David. Still, I have a feeling that he was prepared for that, or he did have some idea in mind. I think usually I went for the move b6 here, which is also a very solid line. He went for bishop b2, which is not necessarily what I would play from the white side, because already here it gives black the option to go for the move d4. d4 here is also a move, but here white would generally prefer to play e3, because in those Benoni positions, white generally prefers not to have the bishop on b2. And now white has a couple of options. Even the immediate knight e5 is quite interesting, and sometimes there are also ideas to play bishop a3 just to exchange this bishop, but this is quite a separate line. After bishop b2 here, d4 is possible as well. Now David could play e3, which would transpose to the game after e3 knight c6, but here I know that there is one option also for white, the move b4. I know that this is objectively equal as well, but I don't think that this is so easy for black, and I didn't know exactly how to react here. I think it's possible to play some a5 move here and to wait and see what black is doing. Maybe there is also a move rook e8 in this position. I could be completely wrong, but it is a typical idea. If you start with knight c6, however, you're not really losing anything, because white now still has the option to take on d5, which, as I said, I would do here, not to give black the option to play d4 here. And now white could take anyway, and then black has the option to take back with a pawn or with a knight. In this video, I'm not going to reveal which one of those I would have chosen. I will definitely reveal it in my video after the event, which I already said I'm going to record for YouTube members, where I will present my whole repertoire for the match preparation. Here David went for the move e3, and this was a little bit surprising to me, because now it really gives me this Benoni position with the bishop on b2, and I knew that this has to be pretty alright for me. Usually in those Benoni positions, I mean, black could even be fighting for an advantage, objectively speaking, but I mean, I knew that this was not going to be like a free roll. I knew that it's going to be a super complex game with chances for both sides to play for win. But I knew that objectively I have to be okay here, if not even more than that. And here obviously white does not have b4, because I could just take and then take on b4. So we got this position in the game, rook e1, very logical, avoiding e5. Also, what I said earlier, I mean, now this bishop on b2 doesn't really make a great impression here. And I think, generally speaking, I should have a pretty good version here of a Benoni. Here I spent some time and went for the move rook e8, which does look a little bit strange, but I just wanted to make like a logical improvement move. I was mostly thinking between rook e1 and rook b8. Another typical maneuver would be knight d7, knight c5, but I cannot do that yet because the pawn on d4 is hanging. So I was thinking this one or rook b8. Rook b8 often connected with the idea to play b5, but I wasn't sure if this was exactly the right plan here. And I was quite certain that rook e8 should anyway be useful, and I think I was quite correct in that assessment that I want to push e5 later on. He played a3, a5. I have to stop b4, or at the very least I really should. Quite typical for the Benoni, and now he played d3. I also thought that knight e5 could be a move which he can consider, but now, for example, we see that the rook on e8 could be quite useful. I'm not sure what I would have played here, probably knight e7. I could also consider bishop d6, but I will play e5 next. This rook b5 idea is quite typical, but I don't think it works here. I thought knight c5, and I'm threatening bishop d7. I thought that should be good for me. Okay, so he played d3, and now, again, I spent some time and went to remove bishop d6, which David told me after the game he thought that it was quite smart. This was one of the few moments I had a quick look at the engine, and I will tell you in a second, apparently, objectively speaking, there is a small issue with that. As you can see, the pawn on d4 is hanging, and I didn't check any further, but I saw that the engine likes white in this position. But this was not obvious to me by any means, and apparently also not to David. To me, it looks like black should be completely fine here. I mean, white's king is not really weak, but I have a nice control over the d4 square. Also, it's not really easy for white now how to untangle, because after knight d2, at least to a human, it looks like I can just take the pawn on d3. I mean, maybe the engine says knight e4 here. I'm not exactly sure what can be the point here, but I don't see any other move. I mean, rook a2 would also be a bit strange. I could go rook d8 or just rook b8, bishop d7. So from a practical sense, it's difficult to make this call to go for that with white. Between bishop d6 and bishop c5, I was thinking there are up and downsides to both. I mean, bishop d6 I liked because I thought that he's not going to take on d4 because it just looked good for black to me. And if he doesn't take, then I'm just going to go e5 next, and then the pawn on e5 is firmly protected. But bishop c5 also made sense. I actually played bishop d6 to completely stop knight e5, because here he could maybe do that. And here the story is a little bit different, because my bishop on c5 now is hanging. If I go bishop d6 back, then I just lost a lot of time. And in general, in the Benoni position, white side in this case really wants to exchange minor pieces, because black has more space, and therefore usually if white manages to exchange a couple of minor pieces, then white is doing fairly well. Hence I played bishop d6, knight bd2, e5. He played knight g5, very typical idea. Again, trying to exchange minor pieces to relieve the whole pressure regarding my space advantage. I played h6 fairly quickly. Here I realized that I should speed up. David told me that after the game that bishop g4 is also interesting, which I did also think about, but I wasn't sure after queen c2 what I'm doing then. But probably this should be a good inclusion for me, because now the queen is a bit out of play. I thought it was maybe not so clear, because he could have ideas to play c5 himself. Yeah, but yeah, queen c2 was kind of the reason I didn't go for it. Bishop f3 I would probably have been quite happy about, because then I can probably just go back and maybe to d7 or to f5, and the bishop is a bit strange on f3. Okay, I went h6, knight e4 I took, and went back bishop f8, and here he made a very interesting decision to go for g4, which I also sort of expected. I mean, it's kind of, at least how I understand David, it's a pretty typical Navara move, very creative and looking at dynamic possibilities on the Kingside as well. And practically speaking, it was not really easy to reply to that. If white does something slowly, like for example bishop c1, I also thought about. I mean, I could consider even going f5 here. Maybe that would work pretty well. I was always worried about the light squares. But in general, another plan would be to go rook b8, b5. This was another thing which I was looking at when it didn't seem like I should be in big trouble here. Yeah, so he went g4, and then this move I already wanted to make. I mean, even before he played g4, I was already calculating this, because it just seems like a very typical move in those Benoni positions, just stopping f5 and playing for the light squares. And being a more positional strategical player, knight e7 immediately came to my mind, because obviously the downside of g4 is that both the f4 and the h4 square have been weakened, and immediately with this knight maneuver I'm trying to make use of that. Other moves I didn't like as much. Queen h4 I considered, with the point that h3, h5 I thought should be good for me. But I thought he can go bishop f3, and then I thought he could have this plan: king h1, rook g1, rook g3, and then maybe even queen f1, rook h3 to kick me out. And I didn't see any concrete concrete play for me. I realized in this position after he played g4, I mean, this was another plan I looked at, rook b8, b5, but I thought this is just way too slow here because, I mean, even if I take, he's just going to take back with the b pawn. And then I didn't really see where my counterplay is, so that's why I decided to play on the king side myself. He went bishop c1, knight g6. Now g5, the move I expected, and actually around here I was feeling like the game was not really going well for me, because this is exactly the position which David, I thought, would be quite happy to get. But at the same time, I thought that I didn't really do anything that wrong in the game so far. I mean, the only decision which I was not sure was correct, and still I'm not sure if it's correct, is to go knight e7, knight g6, but it did seem fairly logical to do so as well. Okay, I think I have to take, otherwise I was worried that he's just going to take and go queen h5 next. And he started with queen h5, which I thought was interesting. I also considered knight g5, after which I also thought I should probably go for the move bishop e7, and queen h5 now would transpose back to the game. Another option for him is to go for bishop takes g5 here, when I can probably also transpose to something similar, but it's not the same with bishop e7. At least play in the same fashion like in the game with bishop e7, but I also thought I could maybe play a move like queen d7. Anyway, I think how he played was quite principled. Let me just quickly fix the time here. I think that looks a bit better. Knight takes g5. I think I have to take. He took with the bishop. I think if he takes with the queen, I should be quite okay. Not even sure that I should go into the endgame here, but I didn't really consider it here. I mean, one option is maybe just to take and go rook b8 and then develop bishop d7, bishop c6. Positionally speaking, I'm doing quite well. Also, the d3 pawn is weak. I could play bishop f5 maybe. So he took with the bishop, obviously playing for dynamics here. And after queen d7, he started thinking for a long time. I think this move he could have maybe underestimated. I think it's the only move, the only really good move for me, because if I go queen d6, which looks like a more natural square, I was worried that he could go f4, and now my rook on e8 is not protected. I was also thinking that this could be possible, like some bishop f5 here, and d3 is also hanging, b7 is hanging. It's very complicated, but another reason I liked queen e7 was that I could have ideas with queen f5 or queen g4 at the right time. But of course, the problem is now the bishop on c8, and I think I came up with a very original way to solve that issue. Here he played b4, which I thought was the critical move, because otherwise my plan is probably to go rook a6 next, similar to the game. Rook a6, then maybe rook b6. Actually, rook a6 followed by b5. This was kind of my main plan. And then I could think of exchanging bishops. If I can exchange my bishop on c8 against his bishop on g2, I think I have a pretty good success, because first of all, I'm exchanging his bishop pair, and secondly, then my king is just going to be much safer, because this bishop is a pretty important attacking piece. Yeah, after b4, I think this was at least practically speaking, this was a great idea. I hope this doesn't sound cocky or anything, but I think this was a great decision, because taking on b4 would also feel quite natural, but here I just didn't see any way to activate my bishop, and also his rook is maybe coming to a8 or to a7, and it started to look pretty bad here. If queen f5, white can always go bishop e4. And I can never go queen g4 to go to the endgame, because then the pawn on b7 is going to be hanging in the end of it. And rook a6 is actually connected to a possible exchange sacrifice, which is after the move b5, the obvious choice. If he doesn't play b5, it's hard to suggest any move to even improve the position. I mean, his pieces are placed fairly well. Bishop e4 doesn't do anything because g6 is protected. Bishop d5 the same. Queen g6 is not a threat because the rook is protecting it. And maybe also here I could consider rook d6 and b6, bishop e7, or rook takes d5. But what is my idea after b5? If I go to d6, then he has c5. And if I go to e6, which I did in the game, now he has bishop h3. Here my point was I'm just going b6, and I'm inviting him to take on e6, because if he does so, at least from a human point of view, he didn't take. But if he does, it looked quite scary, because I'm getting bishop b7. Actually, queen f5 I thought is a huge threat here. And it looked like at least I have some pretty good dynamic chances. And this is exactly the scenario, I think, which he didn't want to allow. That's why he went for something else. I was actually not sure how I would recapture. In the end, I liked queen takes e6 much more. The downside is that here queen f3 is possible, and I think also necessary. Otherwise, queen f5 is, as I said, I think is a big, big threat. And here after queen f3, I was thinking about f6, bishop d2, knight h4. And I did see some more stuff. I thought even after queen g3, I could go queen h3 here. And now I'm threatening knight f3. And if he takes, then knight f3 is anyway unstoppable. And I think that if anyone can be better here, it's probably black. Yeah, it's definitely, because even here, I mean, at the very least, I could repeat moves, but I think there should be more in here for black. So this looked good to me. Again, maybe there is some possible defense here, and white can end up being an exchange up, maybe something like f4, but it didn't seem like this. Didn't seem like white has everything under control here. So David came up with an interesting idea, rook e4, and already here I saw kind of what is his possible idea. Actually, not here, I have to be honest. I think like 1 or 2 moves later. I mean, I went bishop e7 fairly quickly. He played rook e1, and now he's the one sacrificing the exchange. Okay, I took on e4. What else? I also thought queen d6 is a very logical move. And around here, I already felt like, I mean, I'm taking over, because I was really believing in my defensive resources on the king side. But he came up with a very cool idea, bishop f5. Now, what exactly is his threat? If I play a move like a4, for example, small question here, how does white win? I didn't play a4, obviously. White can go rook h4. And now the point is that queen h7 is a big threat, followed by queen h8 mate. Like, let's say just e4, queen h7, and queen h8. And that's the whole idea. And I also cannot take on h4 because it's the same, checkmate on h8. So that's why I decided to make this brave decision, queen takes a3. I think it should be a good move. The whole point being that if he goes rook h4 now, I have queen a1 check. He has to go to g2, and now I take on h4 with a check. And then I can protect everything with g6 next, and I'm just winning. So around this point, I thought that I could easily be winning already, which now begs the question, what did David do wrong? Because, I mean, this whole g4, I think it should be okay. Maybe there was some better way to play it here, possibly taking with the bishop, or I don't know, maybe something else than b4. But it all seemed fairly natural. Maybe he doesn't have to go for bishop h3 here. But again, if I get b6, bishop e7, I think I'm doing fine. So for me, it's very hard to say where he did go wrong. So I did end up taking on a3. I was also considering the immediate knight f8, but I was expecting him to play h3 now, which again sets up the threat of rook h4, because now after queen a1 check, he has king h2. And now I played knight f8, so I thought this pawn on a3 could be quite useful, which in the game actually did turn out to be the case. And my queen is still kind of defending here, and sometimes I have some important checks. So I thought the inclusion of taking and h3 should be good for me. Well, to be fair, I mean, what I said earlier, that I think I'm winning here, probably I was a bit, was a little bit too optimistic here, because he does have quite a lot of attacking potential still. Rook h4, f6. And this was one of just a few moments where I think he had a good chance with bishop h6, objectively speaking. And I was also a little bit worried about this move in the game, but it was not like I thought he makes this move and then I can resign immediately, because I thought I have still quite a few possibilities to defend. I think one of them was rook e7. And it's not really clear where his attack is going. If he takes, I'm just going to take with rook, and even with check. And okay, what else does white do? If he takes, then I think everything is nicely defended. So it's hard to see a follow-up here. David went bishop d2, queen b2, which I thought was logical, just attacking the bishop and also getting ready just to push the pawn. I didn't really want to bring back my queen, which could also be another option, but I thought I should just immediately see counterplay with the a pawn. Now he went for queen h8 check. king f7, and bishop h6. I think I was also considering another move. Was it here? I think I was considering rook g4 as well in this position. But I thought I could play the move g5 here. And this was another position I think I was looking at, but I thought I should be surviving here. Because if he takes, I have queen c1, picking up the rook. And otherwise, okay, he can take on e6, but I should never be worse here. I mean, maybe I can even take with rook, and again, rook g5 fails because of queen c1. Looks like black should be fairly safe here, as funny as it sounds. Bishop h6, this is what he played, I took. I don't think I have any other move. Now he played rook g4, I think also fairly natural. Maybe he could also take on h6, but then, I mean, my queen could also be coming back. Yeah, I thought this was just good for me. I think this is winning on the spot because I'm probably even winning this bishop. If king h2, queen f4, and if king g2, then queen g5. So he played rook g4. King e7, I have to parry this threat on g7. And rook g8. Here were also a couple of options, like, for example, he could consider queen g7 and then this, but I think what he did in the game, I don't know if it did give him a better version. It's hard to say. Also here I already had ideas to play something like king c5, and probably I'm just running out with the king. And it could already be quite good for me. Also rook g7 could be an option, and if king d6, what now? Yeah, also hard to see a follow-up. I mean, this pawn is running and my king can easily find shelter here. Okay, he went rook g8, a4, queen g7 check, king d6, and now queen b7. I was also thinking if he could take something now. Yeah, but there was a nice refutation. If rook takes f8, now I have queen c1 check. And if king g2, I have queen g5 going into an endgame, which is winning for me. And if king h2, I have queen f4, just picking up this bishop. So I thought he cannot do that. What else was I thinking about? Taking on e6, I think just doesn't work because of knight e6. Queen is hanging and the rook on g8 I can exchange. So probably queen b7 is a decent option, but I know this is one of few. This is one of the other positions which I know is winning for me on at this point, but not how I played in the game. After bishop takes e6, I took back rook takes e6 because I saw that now those pieces get exchanged and that I can probably, I mean, it's hard to judge with less time on the clock, but that I can probably not lose here. This is what I saw and I just went for it, but it turns out that I can probably just push this pawn immediately. And I think this was the continuation which should be winning for me. But okay, I mean, I think why I rejected it was this move. Rook takes f8, because if I take back, then there's queen e7 mate. And maybe what is objectively winning is this. And it's actually not, maybe not so surprising. I'm getting a queen, but there is still king g2, and maybe this is winning, maybe I missed something, but still, I mean, this position also doesn't look completely clear to me, because this is a threat. Maybe I should go for king b4 anyway. Hard to say if the queens are actually so strong. What am I even threatening? White can protect this pawn with queen f3. Maybe queen c1 or queen b1 is a big threat, and going from the back rank. Yeah, perhaps this is good, because if rook a8, probably just queen e1, and if check, the king can go to b3, but there's c5 also. That is already a problem, maybe, because king c2, rook a2. I mean, king b4, k8. I don't really see the clear win here. I don't want to turn on the engine in this analysis. So I'm just gonna think a little bit. But I'm pretty sure that this was the moment here where I can just play a3 and not take. Taking like this was also an option, but more just for perpetual. I could probably look for a perpetual here, but I mean, like I played in the game, I thought that it should also be more or less safe for me. So a3, rook takes f8. What else is there? Is there any other move? Because maybe now I can take on e6. Is that possible? Is that the idea? a3, take on e6. But isn't it more or less the same like in the game? I think it should be the same, even a better version for white if I mean, it's been a long day, but it does look like a better version for white because I think my king was on c3 in the game, if I'm not wrong. So again, I'm pretty sure that a3 is winning, but I'm really struggling to find the whole idea here. Rook takes f8, as I said, is mate. And this one is what we analyzed. I think I have to play king b4. Queen e7 is a big threat. Rook a8. And queen e7 is coming nonetheless. King b3 and... Well, I could go king c3. I completely forgot about that. Then it's probably winning. Rook a3 check. King somewhere. And c5 doesn't work because a3 is hanging, and yeah, probably the king is now starting to feel more or less safe. Okay, also this, I mean, in a practical game, I think here still more or less anything can happen. Black probably is winning here, but it didn't look, all of this didn't look convincing, and I saw this and I just went for it. I think from a practical sense, it is understandable. Okay, he went for this. King c3. Seemed like the natural square because I'm also attacking this pawn. And I was still quite optimistic here. But I will tell you one thing, which I also know already. The game from here on, I believe, I didn't check this with a strong engine, but I believe that the rest of the game is all a draw, that it's all equal. And I think he defended it perfectly. I think queen f7 was strong. And here it was quite interesting because I think I have a couple of options. Maybe there was a better option here. I played a3 in the game. David mentioned to me that he was afraid of rook d6, but I didn't like c5, take, and then queen c4 check, king here. And I was a little bit afraid that he will come with some rook g2 and f4, and then my king, I mean, it looks risky, but I am threatening queen c1 at the time being, which I did forget about in the game, which David then told me about. So I think he mentioned that queen takes a4 was a move. And then it goes on. Still, the king can also be in trouble, so this is not an easy decision, but I was also thinking about this, but I just didn't like this. Another completely insane move in this position, which I actually thought about, and I just checked this line after the game because I was so curious, is the move e4. And perhaps this is the best practical try in the position. The point is, if white takes, then I can just take with the rook, and now all of a sudden I don't have to give away this rook, because the problem in general is that the rook is more or less trapped, and rook d6 doesn't work so nicely because of c5. So white shouldn't take, but white can take on e6. And then I was thinking about this position, e takes d3. And it's probably very tricky for white to hold this. I don't remember at all what the line was, which I was analyzing. But it doesn't look easy for white. I mean, both this pawn and this pawn are quite strong. Let me try to recollect what was going on here. I think it is still a draw. I'm pretty sure it is still a draw. But maybe this was a move, rook g3, just to stop d2. And then how does it continue? Maybe a3. Hard to spot the defense even. Maybe not rook g3, but something else. Yeah, guys, try to come up with a defense here for white. It's really difficult. I just couldn't evaluate this. I mean, now it looks especially promising since I know that it's that white is the one who has to be careful to find some only moves. But after such a long game, it wasn't easy to see. And I mean, to be honest, I didn't really just believe in myself enough to play a move like e4 in this position, because it's not easy. Like, you have this a pawn which is already like screaming that it wants to run down the board, and then you just leave the rook hanging and play a move like e4. But I'm anyway quite happy that at least I considered it for a bit of time, but eventually I went for the move a3. Because I was also still quite optimistic here, and at the same time I also thought that I'm not really risking anything. Probably I'm also not risking much in this position after e4 in hindsight, but here at least I was able to calculate more or less quite far to see that I have at least some ideas with perpetual and so on there, so that I'm not going to lose. Okay, he has to take on e6, a2, rook a8 is forced. All of this is forced. Take, king g2 as well. Even though he did spend some time, maybe considering some advantages of king h2, but I think the advantages are clear for king g2 because the pawn on f2 is protected. I took on d3. David played c5. I think this might be the only move to get counter chances, or even to survive, because if he takes on d3, I thought I have king e2. Threatening mostly queen f1 and also d3, I think this should win, since white doesn't have any checks. So I think c5 was a great move. I think I have to take. And now the move which I missed when I was calculating this from starting from which position, not this one, but basically from here. From here on I was already in this queen endgame, and how many moves was it? It was 42, and now I move 48. So the move queen a6, I didn't really see. Maybe there are other options for white already to make a draw as well, but otherwise it looked difficult. Queen b3 was another move which I thought about. But here I thought that I have actually a couple of moves. Queen c3, or what was it? Queen c3 or king d2, I think I both thought about. And here, like queen d1, king c4, I thought that this pawn now actually might become weak, and white is maybe not in time to push it. Maybe the king can even come back and try to pick it up. So I thought this would be good for me, but I completely missed queen a6. b6 also looks logical. What did I think about here? I thought I have this important check, queen a8, and then c4, and I think now I get a much better version than the game. Because, I mean, queen a6 was very smart. I cannot take. Maybe this is still a draw, but definitely not more than that. I could have gotten the same in the game, I think, with the king on d2. It's probably also a draw here, if I would have to guess. But I cannot really do that. So I went for the move queen b1. This was actually one moment which I didn't really check with the computer yet, because here it was a difficult choice for me. Do I play queen b1 or queen b2? I'm still not sure here. I just know that it should be a draw nonetheless. My idea after queen b2 was, if he does the same like in the game, b6 check, c4, b7, then I was calculating e4. And after queen a8, e3, b8 queen, queen takes here, king h1. And I had no idea what is going on here. The problem is also I don't even have perpetual check, because after queen h3, queen g2, queen f2, white has queen g2. And okay, this endgame, if I exchange queens, it could already easily be lost. At least it doesn't look like white is risking anything there. Like this, white for sure should have some option for perpetual, would be my best guess here. Again, it could be that I'm completely wrong here. It's not even easy to find a move for white. But it just felt like maybe queen b1, but even king d2. Again, pretty difficult to suggest something. King f1 maybe. Also here, king d2. Starting to look pretty unpleasant. maybe king f3. Because now if e2, I have queen b5. And if this, I have this. And if d3, queen f4, and I'm picking up the pawn, and now I'm probably already winning with white. So, okay, and also even if white keeps queens on the board like this, I mean, okay, here I can repeat at least, but it's not clear that I can play for win, because once white starts checking with queen b1, my king can also be actually in quite a lot of danger. Okay, so this was interesting. I mean, also here there are options, like I have no idea what is happening after e2. Probably it's, my queen is now hanging, of course. But are there some other options? I don't think so. To take e2, queen b1. Okay, white at least should have perpetual check here, but again, more than that, because there's queen c1. Very fascinating stuff. So also with the problem with this was that white could even consider playing king g3 here. I wasn't so sure about that either. But yeah, that was pretty insane. I'm trying to think what else David was then saying. We had a very fun discussion because we just both enjoyed the game so much. It was so much fun, and we both came up also with some interesting ideas afterwards. I think that here, somewhere around here, David had another thing which he mentioned. Was it maybe king c3? b7, d3. Because if he now goes for this queen a8, I mean, I should be easily winning this queen endgame because I'm 2 pawns up and the c pawn is very strong. Is it possible that he mentioned some queen a5 move? That could be. And if I go here, then I probably didn't gain much. Maybe now queen a6. That looks like, yeah, like it should be okay for white. I decided to go for c4. King d2 may be another option, but here I didn't like. I mean, I just wanted to get my pawns rolling, because here, what was I thinking? I guess queen a8. Can I go king e2 now? Yeah, the problem is also in those lines that white can just promote, and I mean, also here I don't even have perpetual because white always has queen g2. So yeah. In the game I played c4, b7, king d2. Again, I think that was alright. White has to go queen a8, I believe. It's also quite natural, otherwise I'm just going c3 next. And I anyway went for c3. Okay, I can probably try to get some move repetition here already, but also with c3 I thought I'm not risking anything. Because after b8 queen here, I could force a draw by taking and then going c2. And here I think white has to repeat like this, queen b3 and or queen b4, both should be fine. And here it should be a draw. Also note that I don't think I can be playing for a win. Yeah, I guess queen b4 is the most forcing way to do it for white. I mean, even this I thought is not a real way for black to play for a win. Like for example, king f3, and still if this comes, then queen b3 should be fine, and even d2 I don't think is a way to play for win. For example, a move like queen a4, and yeah, a king cannot go to either side. Here there's queen e4, just as a sample line. But I decided to play c2. Already the game was going on for such a long time here. We were again on a pretty low time. And here David played the move queen h8. I also saw that he can go for queen a5 check here, which he also told me that he saw, but he was in fact already more or less trying to play for win with queen h8. After queen a5, what was it? Yeah, that was the line. If I go king e2, then white can go queen b5. And yeah, this is what I wanted to say also earlier. Like if king d2, we're back to what we had before, and even here d3, I don't think is a way to play for win. Like white can go, for example, queen c4 here, and if king d2, then again start giving checks. This should end in a draw. Also, I saw one really funny idea after king d1 here. This one I also checked already. In the game, I thought that now king f1 could be winning, with the point that queen takes b8, queen e1 is checkmate. But this turns out probably to just be a draw, because here it's kind of similar to what happened in the game. I think white has to repeat the move somehow, like this. I don't think white has anything better because the queen is also pinned here. But I do believe that king d1 is losing for this reason. I think queen g8, and now if I promote, then there's queen g4, and now my king is in a lot of trouble. There should be some checkmate somehow. It's also not that surprising because my queens are horribly coordinated, both on the first rank. They should, like one of them should be on a second rank, then my king would be much safer. This was a big issue which I faced, and I was kind of scared already looking at all of these different ideas that David could trick me and checkmate me somehow. But I did decide to take a queen in this position. By the way, if he goes for queen a5 here, I mean, I would have probably gone for king e2, because again, this king d1 should be just too risky. I don't think I have anything better. Yeah. So I promoted, he took on a3, and okay, here there were some other interesting options. I went for king c3, already wanting to force a draw at this point. But at first I was thinking if I could try this move. The problem is if I go king e1, then he has a couple of moves, but I think, well, not a couple, but probably this one is okay. But also more importantly, this one should be okay. And then I was thinking about queen c3, take, and queen e3, and then he wins the pawn, and white is definitely not worse here. So out of that reason, I started to think about king e2. With the idea, if white goes queen f3, now I can go king e1. And now white doesn't have queen a5 check. And this is probably the critical line here. I guess it still somehow zeros, but it also didn't look like it's zero risk for me. I think what I was talking about with David was that here after queen takes f6, black can go e4. And this is where David said, I have no idea what's going on, and I can just say the same. It's so hard to judge. It's probably a forced draw somehow. Maybe this move is possible. And I'm not sure even if I would have seen e4. I didn't see it in the game, but even if I would have seen it, I'm not sure I would have gone for it. Now already, maybe this is a threat. Still, there's queen d2 there. But yeah, this is, I'm not even sure that how the engine will handle such a position. Usually with 4 queens on the board, it's quite difficult even for the computer to evaluate. So king e2 was interesting. Maybe white can also take on f6. This was another one of my problems, and the thing which I missed here is that that the e4 square is covered. But okay, still white can go queen f3, so I was probably not completely wrong to abandon the line, even though I could play this. My pawn is not really going anywhere. If d3, this check is a bit annoying. Still king d1. I mean, this, at least from a practical point of view, this could be quite dangerous, because white always needs to find the right perpetual check, and like I was trying to aim for something like this, but I couldn't force it because there were 4 queens on the board, and I couldn't find a forcing way to get one of the queens off the board. So I did play king c3, but okay, just to revisit the line once, I think king e2 is a very interesting move. Well, he could take immediately, as I said, but I thought that this could be somewhat of a success for me to get this position. If he's not winning my pawn on d4 somehow, but I don't see a way for him to do so. then I would say it's a small success for me. This position. This. Yeah, King F1 also doesn't do anything. At least I have King C2 with check there. So probably the line which David also mentioned was, at least from a practical standpoint, this was kind of critical. And now E4. And what should white do? Has to move the queen or pin the pawn? I guess pin the pawn, because the other move which can be considered is maybe queen g3. Possibly with this threat. What do I do now? Maybe queen c2, pinning the pawn. Next up we will have d3, d2, d1, and then we have 5 queens on the board. It's not so easy to see how to stop it. I mean, d2 is probably not possible yet because of queen e3, but the pawn is coming. Maybe also e3 can be quite a big threat. So maybe queen e5 instead. Let's see. And this is where we were before, when I more or less gave up. Maybe queen c2. Queen c2, queen a5. I still have queen d2. When again, it looks like to me this should be a big success unless white can repeat. But now again, I could play queen d3 in this position. But then again, white can repeat. And I have to go back to d2. Okay, I'm not so sure that's so easy to find for white. If it's even the right way to hold. That of I'm not so sure. Check. Queen d2 forced. Queen e5. Maybe e3 is an option. Possibly. He cannot take because he's pinned. And what does he do? It's also not entirely clear what I do next, but at least I have one check here, which could be a bit annoying for him to face. Okay, I think, I mean, I will probably make another in-depth video about the endgame after I've also checked it more deeply myself and thought about it more. But these are just my first impressions here. And I think that to play on with King E2, unless I'm missing something concrete, could be a very interesting practical possibility for me in this position. Maybe we would have gotten this position on the board, and then I don't really see the clear way for white to attack my king. Now it seems like the king is fairly safe there. Anyway, I played king c3. I was already kind of feeling, I mean, especially look on the clock, that I should be careful not to over push. And also this, I think, is the good square, because if I go to c2, then I'm just inviting another check here. And I think that here, also going to b2, here white has nothing better than to repeat. I think it's also fairly important that he does it like this with queen d5, because if he goes here, for example, then I could think of playing on with queen a3. And after queen d2, I still have queen b2. Maybe there is still a perpetual here, now that I think about it. Probably. But I wasn't so sure. Because if white gives a check here, I have queen b1, and everything is covered. So I thought the way he did it was good, because I cannot go queen b3, because then my queen on c1 is hanging. And king a1 also doesn't help me, because he can go here and again repeat like this. So yeah, super exciting game. I don't know what else to add. I really had a lot of fun playing this game. I think David did too, and that's just nice. I think the match is just really a pleasure so far to play. David is such a great person. Even analyzing with me yesterday after he lost, and also today, just the joy which he had to play that game. He even asked the arbiter to keep the score sheet. The score sheet. I did the same. So it was just a fantastic experience overall to play this game. I hope you guys enjoyed the analysis and also following the game live. I know that we had many live viewers on lichess. Make sure to check out all the links in the description down below. I've linked a couple of things, some of my courses, my other social media, as well as the link to the to the Women in Chess Foundation in case you want to contribute to their mission. That was it for today, and I will see you guys for the recap of round number 5 of my match against Grandmaster David Navara. See you then.